What is up, guys? I'm Brandon Unger, and welcome to part 2 of my Paintball Warmup Series. Today is all about flexibility. We're going to be talking about what types of stretches you should be doing, how to be doing these stretches, and then when to perform these stretches. Now we all know flexibility is important, but why it's important is a little less commonly known. With flexibility training, we're able to decrease our chance of injury, prevent the development of muscular imbalances, and even enhance our strength, joint range of motion, and power. So let's get right into it. When we talk about flexibility, we always want to refer back to the flexibility continuum. Each pillar of the flexibility continuum contains different types of stretches. Today we're going to start with static stretching. Now, static stretching falls underneath the corrective pillar of the flexibility continuum. This form of flexibility utilizes the neurophysiological principles of autogenic inhibition to improve soft tissue extensibility. Basically, it allows our muscles to return to a natural resting length. It's important to know that static stretching has been theorized to decrease muscle spindle activity as well as motor neuron excitability. This means that after static stretching, our muscles aren't as excited or aren't able to fire as quickly as we'd want them to during a competition. That being said, using static stretching prior to paintball usually isn't the best, but there are some cases in which it is recommended. Post-workout or post-paintball, on the other hand, is a great time to use static stretching. Proper performance of static stretching requires the hold of the stretch at the first point of tension or resistance barrier for at least 30 seconds. Now that we know how to static stretch, let's talk about what types of static stretches that we can be doing. This first stretch will target the gastrocnemius muscle, or the bulge part of the calf. The second calf stretch I like to do focuses on the soleus muscle. The soleus muscle is the longer, deeper muscle of the calf musculature. You'll feel this stretch a little bit closer to the ankle. My next favorite static stretch is doing the standing adductor stretch. Your adductors are a group of muscles that are located on the medial or the inside part of your legs. They help bring our legs together. Next, we have the 90-90 hamstring stretch. This stretch is great for overall hamstring tightness. This next one is my favorite hamstring stretch. This one's called the supine biceps femoris stretch. You should feel this stretch on the lateral aspect of your hamstrings. Next, we have a kneeling hip flexor stretch. Our last static stretch will be the supine figure 4. As an added bonus to this stretch, push your elbow into the thigh of the leg that you are currently stretching. As a reminder, we're only going to be using static stretching before paintball if we find any muscle is tight or overactive. We will, however, use static stretching post paintball or afterwards as our cool down. So we've touched on corrective or static stretching. Now let's touch on active or active stretching. Active stretching, also known as active isolated stretching, is when we allow our agonist and synergistic muscles to dynamically move a joint through a full range of motion. This creates reciprocal inhibition in the functional antagonist, which allows for greater range of motion. For example, the supine straight leg raise utilizes the quads and hip flexors to stretch the hamstrings. Now, the proper performance of active stretching is when one would perform 1 to 2 sets, holding each stretch for only 1 to 2 seconds for 5 to 10 repetitions. This first stretch is the standing adductor stretch. Now, the majority of active stretches are very similar to the static stretches, but instead of holding for a long duration like we do in static, we're only holding for 1 to 2 seconds, but repeating for 5 to 10 repetitions. Next, we have the 90-90 hamstring stretch. Here we have the supine biceps femoris stretch. And lastly, one of my other favorites, the kneeling hip flexor stretch. Active stretching can be used in a few different situations. First, we can use it simply if we have no muscular imbalances. 2, we can use it after static stretching and before competition. And 3, prior to activities that require maximal effort. Now that we talked about static and active stretching, let's move on to our last pillar of the flexibility continuum, the functional pillar. In the functional pillar, we're using dynamic stretches. Dynamic stretching is when we use a muscle's own force production and momentum to take a joint through a full available range of motion. Dynamic stretching is my favorite way to get warmed up for paintball because it allows me to work my flexibility and increases my heart rate, which will then increase my core temperature, allowing me and priming me to get ready for a competition. Follow along as I take you through some of my favorite dynamic stretches. This first dynamic stretch is called the quad pull to lunge and twist. Next, we have the knee hug to reverse lunge and praise. Next, we have a side lunge hop. Lastly, we have a forward hurdle and shuffle, followed by a reverse hurdle and shuffle. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you all tuning in. If you enjoyed what you saw and maybe you learned something, please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more. I'll be posting more paintball drills and full workouts coming up soon. Thanks guys. As a bonus, here's a couple extra stretches that I like to do if I'm feeling a little extra tight that day.